so I don't forget.
Thank you, Amber. Oh, 4 chats. Do you mean for the, this is for Rhonda, do you mean for the second, like 603 and 605? Okay, we don't have those out yet because generally the instructor will publish those probably about 2 or 3 weeks before the session begins, and then they'll send out reminders to you. Traditionally, though, if I'm correct, Dr. Stedman, traditionally it's going to be the same night, same time, possibly.
Their class in the spring will be on Wednesday nights. Okay.
And I know when you get to 605 in the summer, traditionally I start that at 6 o'clock. So that'll be a change for you because in the summer it's just a little easier to start a little earlier so you can get going on whatever you need to do.
And Dr. Lamb will talk to this more later on, but in 603 they will have consistently, there's Dr. Lamb. Dr. Lamb, they were asking about 603. You will be completely involved with everything going on with 603 in the spring. Am I correct? Either as their instructor.
That's correct. That's me. Yeah, I'm just loafing tonight. I don't have anything to do with 601. Well, I'm yes, 603.
Yes, you do, because every time I ask you to do something.
Yeah. You ever know?
No, I'm the leader of the group in 603. Why do you need to know about 603?
They were just asking about I said traditionally, well, they were asking Dr. Stone, but I told them, I said, you come on Wednesday nights at 7 o'clock, and that you will, whether you are their instructor or not, you'll be some of their instructors, but whether you're their instructor or not, you will be involved in everything they do in 603.
That's correct. I lead that group. You'll see me. Even if you're not in my sections, you'll see me. I lead that group. They use my shells, all the materials. The coaching model is a little bit different. You don't go to the coach's shells unless we ask you to. We expect by the time you get to 603 that your work is going to be quality enough that a few tweaks from the instructor is all you need. And so it shortens the process considerably and takes a lot of the time out of it. You just got to satisfy your instructor, and then you move on. We pick up the pace a good bit in 603 because we have a lot of coming and going to and from. We've got a lot of activities we do in 603. Not written activities. You got to write them up. But it's a lot of going and interviewing people and learning things at your school about the operations of your school. And so we do a lot more of that. So we don't have as much time to spend on the evidences. So the coach is there to help you if needed, but the coach is not just a regular process with your coach. Your interaction becomes with me or your instructor, and if there's a little something missing, we'll tell you what it is, but we keep things moving a lot faster because we got some other things we want you to do. But yeah, I'm involved with that. Dr. Stone's in charge of 605. When you get there, it slows down. It's a lot more laid back when you get to 605. It's a journey of self-discovery in 605. It's more about you.
However,
my job is to teach you how to run a school.
However, you'll be taking 605 in the summer. So we have 10 weeks to do what we traditionally do in 15. So you'll be working hard.
You'll be working hard, but it's working hard on you. It's working hard on yourself, and reading, assessing yourself, what's your strengths, what's your weaknesses, those kinds of things. 605 is a journey of self-discovery. 603 is about how you legally run a school to stay out of jail and not lose your house. That's what 603 is about.
And I told them in 605 that they would be seeing a lot of our three faces again, probably, if things.
Oh, yeah.
The same three of us again.
I just came off. I just did a section of 603. That's where I was from 6 to 7 to 9. I do that for my EDCI doctoral students. Okay. I teach them law and finance as well.
Okay.
And so
all right.
Go ahead.
I have 7 o'clock, so I want to thank everyone for being on time and for being here tonight. We've had time. We want to make sure it's useful for you. So welcome. We are in week 11 of 16 weeks. So as you can tell, we are well on our way toward completing this semester. And I know you felt that pressure in getting these things done, but it's going to intensify because we want to make sure that you're ready for 603 and 605 at the end of the semester. So welcome, Dr. Revis. It's great to see you as well. But at this point, I will turn it over to Dr. Stedman to talk about the assignments for this week and to look ahead to next week.
And can everybody see my screen? Can you see my screen, Dr. Stone?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Okay, let's look at, and I had a question about this, so I just wanted to make sure that there is clarity. The process for the APTEL is very, very similar, where it parallels with what you did for the APSL. Now, the APTEL Task 1, you see under assignments, APTEL Task 1 Zoom conference link due to assignment Dropbox, that is by the end of this week. That is the same assignment as you did the beginning of the semester when you had the APSL, but we asked you to wait until you completed Task 2, and you combine Task 1 and Task 2 in that Zoom session. This is where you get with your Zoom team, and you have that scholarly discussion about where you are, with the APTEL at this point. You will have completed Task 1 of the APTEL. You will understand basically the direction you're going in, and it's a time to talk about where you are with the APTEL development. And we said Task 1, but it doesn't matter. As you are already looking at Task 2 and projecting Task 3, it's okay to have that discussion with your team members and, hash things out. If there's something that's not clear, somebody else may have an idea that you haven't thought about. So this is just a good time to we say Task 1, but it's a good time to talk about the APTEL with your team. And again, you will pick your Zoom master. That Zoom master will send out the link to the team. You'll decide on a time that you're going to have it. And then you will, once it's over with, you will upload the video, and then you will send the video link to your team members. And every one of you will submit that same link into Blackboard for your assignment, just like you did with the APSL. And Task 1 revisions are due to the instructor. You will submit that to the APTEL assignment Dropbox. Many of you have already done that. Once, and Dr. Stone, you may have had the same thing. Once I made the suggestions for the changes, they turned around and fixed it, sent it back. So I've already cleared many of the students with APTEL Task 1 and told them just to complete the process with their peer reviews and the other things, but to go ahead and get started on Task 2. So many of you are already into Task 2, and that's a good thing. Also this week, your APTEL Task 1 peer reviews, 2 of them are to be placed in your assignment Dropbox. This is for Task 1. Many of you have already cleared that up. I would remind you, don't backslide on us and do work less than what you're capable of doing. Make sure that you are giving us the best reviews that you can possibly give us. Some of them are, there's nothing wrong with it, and what you've submitted, it is good information, but it's not the best that you can do, and it's not what some of you did when you did the APSL. So I would ask you to not slack on that and to give us the best reviews. Just continue doing the work that we know that you're capable of doing. And also on Sunday night, Task 2 of the APTEL that we've talked about for the last 2 weeks, Task 2, the draft, will be due for Dr. Stone and for me to look at. And we, make sure that you're as inclusive as possible with your Task 2 draft. You got a lot coming off. We are in week 11. You only have 5 weeks left, and actually you only have 4 weeks left because that last week I've saved to work with people that basically that need help at the last minute. So you basically have 4 weeks to complete everything that we've got to do for the APTEL and to get it submitted to TaskStream. So you cannot waste your time. So those are your assignments for the week. Dr. Stone, let's move on. And do you have any comments about the APTEL work that was submitted this week at this point?
I do. And just very kind of briefly, I've graded a couple of them. Everyone that's put them in, and I've sent a couple of them back with some comments. And generally, the comments are ranging from, remember, this is a literature review, and what I'm looking for in your paper and under task 1 is that you have done a review and that that you are citing those places or the references. And I'm looking for those in the body of each one of the 5 discussion topics, but I'm also looking for them in the bibliography or the reference pages. So, just remember, this is not about necessarily about your school. This is really about a literature review about those particular 5 topics. So I sent a couple of them back to help with that, but I'm really looking for your citing, and I'm looking for that APA style. That would be my biggest advice.
And I will say that for the most part, the work was very good work, and a good turnaround with it. I will say the ones that experienced problems, my perception is that and Dr. Stone and I were talking about, we realize how busy you are, working and being moms, being dads, everything else that you've got involved. But this is a part of your life right now, so you still have to fit it in. I think in trying to find time for this, I think a few of you did not read as carefully as you should have read. If you go back and you read that template, you look at the outlines that we've given you and look at the helpful hints. If you go back and look at that, it clearly lays it out for you. And I think many of you, when you went back and fixed it, some of you still have not fixed it, but many of you, when you fixed it, you realized, wow, it was an oversight. So I would ask you to slow down enough to make sure that you're getting it as much as possible the first time, so that you're not having to go back and repeat things, and we can give you permission, to move on with what you're supposed to be doing. So that would be my take on that.
And Danny, Dr. Salmon, the only other thing I could add too is that it's so much easier if you follow the prompts.
Yes.
That's easy for us as evaluators. It's easier for us as instructors. And when you get one when you get one of the topics, it's third in line and you put it up in second, I'll catch it, but it is so much easier if you just simply follow the prompts that have been provided to you. You won't get these prompts always in the next courses, but now is a good time to beginning to use them.
But if they'll follow what we're teaching them this semester, they'll be able to take the APSIL and the APTEL information that we've trained them in, and they'll be able to create their own. And that's the whole purpose, is being able to take what you've learned and adapt it to when you don't have a template, whatever, you will emulate the ones that have been provided for you.
And one more thing, and I'll stop. These
go ahead.
templates and what you're doing now, and I can tell you this for sure, when you get into 605, you're going to be revisiting all of these templates, and you're going to be pulling information, adding new pieces to it, your own personal experiences, your own personal self-reflection to it. So that's why it's got to be right here. It's got to be exactly as we need it to be, because you're going to use these things, these evidences later on in your 605, and I'm assuming also in 603 a little bit, Dr. Lamb. Is that correct?
He stepped away, but that is correct.
Okay.
That is correct.
That is correct, Dr. Stone. I'm here. I'm just I have mine muted.
All right.
Okay.
I've never taught 603, so I'm not quite sure all you.
Yeah, we're going to use a lot of it in the OMA. And we're going to use a lot of it in the skip as well. So it has to be right now.
I thought so.
We're going to use, well, I'm going to go ahead and tell you. We're going to use task 1, 2, and 3 of the APTEL verbatim. We're going to take the APTEL labels off of it. It's going to become OMA task 2. So your APTEL has to be right, because you're not even going to change anything other than take the labels off of it. And you're going to submit task 1, 2, and 3 of the APTEL as your second task of the OMA. So if it's not right now, it won't be right then either. You'll fail twice. So APTEL, all of it other than task 4 where you write your competencies, we're going to use it all task 1, 2, and 3, every bit of it in the OMA next semester. So it's got to be right now.
Dr. Lamb, I had a question from a student right before class started, and I think this is good enough that we can address it with everybody. Their principal is giving them some kickback about another survey. They did one in October. They've got another one coming out, and said that they were giving them some kickback because they said that it was too much for the teachers. And my advice to them was because all of that is to take what has been done and to use that information as best they can to fit that need in there if their principal is not going to allow them to send out another survey. That I think we can make it work, because it's asking a lot of the same questions. They'll just have to be creative with it and to provide a narrative explanation in their work. I've had a couple that's had that problem. Do you have any
Well, it's only a 5. I mean, you know, all your surveying is what opportunities do you have here in terms of empowerment?
Right.
It's just Whitaker survey, but
Right.
An alternative to sending the survey is just pull the professional development section from your TWC.
That's that. Or if you're in South Carolina, it would be from your advanced ed report.
Advanced
Right.
ed.
Your
There's
advanced
a
ed report.
section in your teacher working condition survey in North Carolina and advanced ed in South Carolina that pretty much addresses the same thing. You
So
can just pull that data and keep right on moving.
And if you're having a problem with that and you need clarification, just speak with Dr. Stone or me, and we will work with you individually if that's the case. I've had a couple to reach out to me about that. So just wanted to let you know.
If they don't want you doing another survey, then just pull the survey data that's already there.
Okay.
And then you can just keep right on rolling.
Okay.
That one shouldn't slow you down a bit.
Okay. As a reminder, remember this is the week, and you should have started last week, I would hope, that you are already working, we're in task 2, that you're already working on those five days of where you are asking the questions in the school, you're observing in the school, you're doing your walkthroughs, you're gathering information, you're getting that qualitative data that you're going to need to be able to do what you've got to do for task 3. You're writing it up in task 2, and we're going to talk about task 3 in just a few minutes. But remember, when you get to prompt 1, these are the same 5 areas, and I'm not going to go over the 5 areas again. These are the same 5 areas that you've seen in task 1. But remember, in task 1, your job was it goes back to what Dr. Stone said. What does the research say? You're doing a literature review. That's what you're doing in task 1, and most of you have completed that. Now, in task 2, okay, this is what the research says in task 1. In task 2, when it comes to building efficacy and empowerment among staff, what are you actually seeing in your school? Now, this is based on, again, your observations, your informal interviews with people, the questionnaires, the surveys that you're doing, the checklist that you are completing. All of this comes from that information. Interviewing your principal, your assistant principal, literacy coaches, or anybody else that's in a leadership capacity at your school. You're gathering information. Okay, again, the research said this in task 1. But this is actually in these 5 areas. This is what's happening. This is what's happening in my school. This is where it is. And there's a reason for this. And Dr. Stone's going to address this in just a few minutes. But again, this is what the research says. This is actually what's happening. So that is prompt 1. In prompt 2, again, you're interpreting the checklist from task 1, the survey from task 1. You're actually using those to get information in task 2. So you're going to interpret information from your checklist. You're going to interpret information from your survey. You're going to, again, use information that you've gathered from speaking with your administrative team. Anything that you can pull as it relates to teacher leadership, teacher empowerment, inside and outside that classroom, you're going to put that information there. You're going to write about it, but you're going to show it, and you're going to do that by, creating whatever visuals that you want us to see, whether it's in graphs, pie graphs. We don't care, but you're going to visually explain the results in task 2. You're actually going to talk about your own experiences with the walkthroughs as well. So that is what task 2 is all about. Now remember, at this point, pretty much in task 1 and in task 2, you've kind of been on your own. You have not been working with your team much at this point. You may have talked to them a little bit, but you've not been really working with them as a team. Okay, we need to begin to go ahead and look at task 3 as you are completing task 2 for our review by the end of this week. Let's look at task 3. Task 3, the prompt. The candidates will create an analytical, and I want you to notice analytical narrative is highlighted, that describes the process of assembling a team of colleagues. This is your PLC team. In task 3, you will lead your team to develop and present a teacher empowerment and leadership professional growth plan to school administration and/or the school leadership team. Using resources and data collected in task 1 and 2, the candidate-led team will utilize multiple digital graphic and presentation tools to create a report that includes the following. Now you see there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There's 10 areas highlighted. That means, remember we told you that if it's in yellow, highlighted in yellow, that means you're going to write something. You're going to do a narrative. So under and in your APTEL Helpful Hints document, you'll see where every one of them I said your heading is a vision for positive, and then you write your narrative under that. Now again, a vision for positive school environment. You and your team you're going to discuss this. You're going to put it out on the table. But again, based on what the research says, based on what your findings were in task 2, then you're going to begin looking at what you have got to do this is the narrative work for developing your professional growth plan, for improving teacher leadership and teacher growth in your school. And you can kind of look at it like this: with developing a teacher empowerment leadership growth plan, you're putting together a plan. And I kind of thought about it today. I said, well, it's like if I put a plant in my yard in the spring, I'm not going to just put it there and and leave it alone. I've got to water it. I've got to nurture it. I've got to keep the weeds out. I'm going to put fertilizer to it. I'm going to prune it. I'm going to do whatever I have to do because I want my plant to grow and I want it to look good and I want it to be the best plant possible for my yard. Well, that's the same thing that you're doing, with, and I lost my place. That's the same thing that you're doing with your teachers. It's kind of like, you have to put fertilizer there. You got to keep water there. You got to prune them. You got whatever it takes to make them better at the craft, better at what they do. Again, it goes back to the things that you do are going to you want them to be happy, want to come to work every day, to enjoy what they do. And then again, the end result is going to be that student achievement is going to improve in your school. You see the template. This is an example of how the growth plan could be graphically summarized after the narrative. Again, this is a non-negotiable. You must use this format. You're going to use it consistently throughout all of the evidence work that you do. Again, once you do all your narrative work here, and you've led your team, you've put all your thoughts, you're going to actually take everything that you've written and you're going to put it into this growth plan, into this format. And again, you see again where it lists. These are the specific activities. These are the things, what you're going to do, the things that you're going to do to try to improve teacher leadership, teacher empowerment, and anything that you're going to do to as it relates to your teacher growth plan. These are the things. Timeline. This is when it's going to happen. Person's responsible. Who's going to be responsible for taking? Maybe you've got district people that's going to come in and help lead some of the staff development or whatever the things that you're proposing. What are you going to need? Again, formative assessment. Remember, formative assessment is going these are the grown people that you're dealing with. You can put something in place, but how do you know that that is actually happening? This is the formative assessment method is your benchmarks for for monitoring the process with your teachers. Summative, we know that this is the end result. This is whatever happens at the end. What are your goals? And again, these can be short-term goals, long-term goals, and these things they're asked for up here. Your short-term goals and long-term goals. You're going to actually list all of those in here, and then at the end, how do you know that you have reached success? How are you going to determine that? What will determine that? Dr. Lamb, any comments on this at this point?
Well, I look as I go down this list. A vision for positive school environment. I want a school where we value teaching and learning. A positive environment is where people want to come to work every day and kids want to come to school every day. That we empower our best teachers, our best classroom leaders to be our school leaders, where there is a reward system for great teaching. That's the kind of positive school environment that I want. Documentation to support your identified needs. What does your survey and what does your checklist, what does that tell you? Your survey says not many people are getting the opportunity to do these higher level things. Your walkthrough data says not many teachers are using best practices. We need to see that documentation. What does the data say? Because that says if not many teachers, we're going to need to do more staff development whole group. And your staff development comes in three forms: whole group, small group, and one-on-one. And the amounts of those vary according to what you need, what your data says. If your data says 90% of your teachers are doing or better are doing really well with best practices, we need to do more one-on-one and more small group in PLCs and not so much whole group, all the faculty kind of all day staff development. But the documentation to support your identified needs, your identified need is your staff development. the documentation is from your survey and your checklist data. That's what that is. Strategic indicators of success, I would look at more teachers doing better in terms of their evaluation, more teachers doing better in terms of their EVOS scores, because that's where we get back, that's where we see those best practices really ringing the bell, is on the EVOS growth scores. There's a reason why we call them best practices.
Dr. Lamb, next week, if you're going to be with us, would you be prepared to talk more about EVOS next week with them?
I will.
Okay, thank you.
EVOS is value added. You know, teachers are their growth, the growth of their students is how well do you do? How many of your students meet a year's growth? It doesn't matter that they grew from 30 to 40. It's not, that's comparative accountabilities when they're all at 70% or above. But do you grow kids a year? Using best practices helps you do that. That's value added. We'll talk about EVOS next week. But that would be one of my indicators of success. Not only are teachers happier and they're doing a better job in the classroom, those would be two. That's kind of short term. But my long term would be that kids learn more, that achievement. And that's the end goal here. So short term, we're looking at more teachers feel empowered and get to be in leadership positions. More teachers are better in their classrooms. But the payoff is that long term is that kids learn more. That's the payoff. Activities, what kind of activities to address goals and objectives? That's our staff development plan. And we're going to do one of three things, or we're going to do all three things. We're going to do whole group, PLC, which is small group, and then one-on-one coaching. That's what we're going to do. But what, how much, and when, and where of those is what is, and what is going to be the content of that staff development. But the activities, again, are whole group, small group through PLCs, and one-on-one coaching with a mentor. Okay, so that's going to be our activities. But what's going to be the content of that activity? Are we going to what are we going to teach these teachers? Are we going to teach them Marzano? Are we going to teach them some other learning? What are we going to teach them? A plan to communicate progress with vital stakeholders. Our plan, that's what we're going to tell them that we're going to do. That's formative assessment. We want to see these when we come out. We want to see you doing these things. We want to see this staff development. We're going to make sure that happens. That's your formative assessment. Specific timeline of activities. When we're going to do it, we're going to do whole group in the teacher work days, and then at the teacher work days mid-year. We're going to do our small group PLC work. Every other week, we're going to take one of those 8 or 9 best practices and work on it and share examples of it. You know, what we're going to do when we're going to do our one-on-one. Plan for stakeholder involvement and buy-in. They can see, and you need to show them the overall picture of this plan and get them to understand the relationship between what you're doing and what it can do for scores. And that's your goal. Specific roles and responsibilities, who's going to do what and where, and then our assessment criteria. Again, for me, short term is what teachers get. Long term is what students get. Our goal is to improve those test scores. Our indicator of success would be moving them 3 to 5 points this year.
Right.
Or a certain percentage, 85% or more making growth this year. Whatever your academic goals are. But that's kind of how you work through this. And then you summarize this in your graphic organizer that Dr. Stedman has here in red. But I've just kind of worked you through what each of these sections is about. This is about designing a staff development plan that makes your teachers better. And not just make them feel better about themselves, but that they get better results come student test time. That's what it's all about here. And again, I want to work in a building where teaching and learning is prized, that the teachers being leaders and making decisions are the best teachers in the classroom. And that's the only way that you can create a culture of teaching and learning. I don't know much about school. I've only been in it for 40 some odd years, and that's after I went to school. But I do know that creating a culture of teaching and learning, you have to prize good teaching. It has to be the most important thing every day is good teaching. That's where it starts. And good teaching gets results. And that's what we're trying to do is, many of you, because you've all been through a previous master's degree program and you're adults, you all understand, Jim Collins' Good to Great, the book that was written several years ago, and everybody really beat that thing to death. But one of the things it talked about is the most important thing about a new hire is finding a way to make them successful. And that's the whole idea of school administration. You hired these people or you inherited them, one or the other. And your job is to make them successful. And that's what the APTEL is about, finding a way to make your folks successful. Success being measured in student outcome. Kids learning more and then doing better when it comes time when they are assessed. That's the whole notion.
And Dr. Lamb, and next week we will focus more on exactly how you need to present this to your administrative team and to your school improvement team. Mm-hmm. Based on all of the evidence work, this is one of the biggest presentations that you actually will do, based on my observation, Dr. Lamb. This is a big presentation. It is the biggest one. It is the biggest presentation. So you know, as you are developing this, as you're right, just remember that it's your time, it's your opportunity to shine before your administrative team and before your school improvement team. So but next week, Dr. Lamb's going to talk about EBOS. One of the things I'm going to focus on is actually what you need to do, and we'll review this a little bit, but to review with your, what your presentation needs to consist of, what you need to do. Okay.
Dr. Stem and Dr. Lamb, there are two chats that probably someone may want to address.
I just addressed it. Okay. That yes, when he's talking about collect data of the school over a period of 5 days, that's using your walkthrough. That's using that walkthrough tool. And you can also talk to teachers because that's qualitative as well.
Right.
You can talk to them. Do you do this? Do you do that? And also get out and look. I mean, data collection is both qualitative and quantitative, and the best data collection is what do you see, and then what do you observe, and then what the teachers tell you when you do interviews. So qualitative work is interviews and observations. The actual document score the checklist, that's quantitative, but then qualitative is what you see and what you hear. And the best data is been verified, is both mixed methodology, is both qualitative and quantitative. You folks have a master's degree, you had a research course, and so y'all know that we always like to cover both bases. We want the numbers, but we also want to put our eyes and ears on the problem as well. Because that qualitative data tells us the why. The hard number, the quantitative data tells us the what. But the interviews and observations tell us the why. And then the why is what leads us to the plan. Why is it this way? What are we missing? What are we lacking? What do we need? That's the why leads us to the plan or the how.
And the why is the gap.
That's exactly right. The why is the gap. We're talking about WHY. So your hard data, your quantitative data is the what. Your qualitative data, the interviews and observations, is the why, and that's your gap. And that leads you to the how, which is your professional development plan or your professional growth plan for your teachers. It goes what, why, how. Just that simple.
There's also a question from Amber about using different team members from the PLC and the APSEL.
That's their decision. If they want to change team members, with the APTEL, they can. That's left up to them. If somebody in their original team didn't work out, or if somebody doesn't want to be on the team anymore, they can change, you know.
Or somebody is more relevant than
Right.
somebody, or you want to
Right.
add, yeah. But
Right. Yeah.
now
Or you can add or
understanding
take away. Yeah.
that when you do that, you may have to go back and do some of that same work with them, the new people, as you did in the app cell with the old people in terms of norms, values, shared beliefs, deliverables, you know, all those kinds of things in terms of how we're gonna operate this thing. We've had that problem in the past as well, where people formed their group, their PLC worked just fine for the app cell because everybody was on the same page. Everybody knew what their duties and responsibilities, norms, values, those things. And then they changed for the app cell and just put some new people in, and then it was no longer. It became dysfunctional, and they were wondering why. Well, the whole point of us having you do the work in the app cell to begin with on how to form a PLC is so that whenever you form a team or bring new members in, you have to do that induction with them as well. Otherwise, it's very likely to become dysfunctional.
Right. A best practice is to keep it intact if possible.
It
And to
really
change,
is.
yeah, and
But
to
it's
not to change much if you don't have to.
You don't have to, but now if you have to or if you want to, then understand you're going to have to go back over that same ground that you did with the original group with the new people. It can't be like, oh, I hired this teacher after school started, I won't do any staff development with them, like I did during the work days with everybody else. They'll just figure it out on their own. No, they won't. So if you bring somebody else on board in this, this moving bus here, to use another Collins metaphor, then it's your responsibility to get them in the right seat and have them doing the right thing. And for me, it would have to be almost an emergency before I'd take somebody else on and have to train them.
Yeah, and I'm going to stop share, and we're going to move forward. Everything that Dr. Lamb and Dr. Stone have just talked about is going to lead into Dr. Stone's topic. When you did task 1, you were doing the research. Again, that is, what does the research say? Task 2 is what actually is happening. And Dr. Stone's topic today is you're going to determine the gap, and he's going to talk about that gap analysis in his presentation today.
Thank you, Dr. Lamb, for introducing it. I'm not on mute, am I?
No, we can hear you.
Awesome. Well, the why is the gap. So as you began to work on as all these evidences, the gap analysis is really a tool in which you can get to understanding what the problems are. It's a real simple. So this PowerPoint is just going to take you through a couple of the points why it is important to do a gap analysis and to have that in your tool chest of opportunities to use when you become an administrator or when you lead a PLC. So, obviously a gap analysis is something that you need to be mindful of, whether you're moving toward where you are now to where you want to be, whether that's all about innovation, whether it's about remediation, whether it's about moving forward to the next step. So there's always a gap, and that gap is a falling off point for many people. So most of us, when we are in charge of a school, one of the things when you become that principal or assistant principal, oftentimes there's a sense that you come in and the superintendent will place you at that school because he or she wants some restructuring. There's something that's not quite working right, and that in itself is the why, the gap. So they may assign you there based on to restructure, and that's where a gap analysis really becomes an important tool. Because if you're looking to make improvements, whether it's to restructure, whether it's to make small improvements, big improvements, it's a great tool to use because it will uncover problems that you may or not even know exist. And if you don't know it exists, I can almost guarantee you that the vast majority of your staff know there's a problem, but they really don't know what that problem is. It's a way to get rid of some inefficiencies, and if you use it correctly, it's a great way to tackle some of those sacred cows that are in every single one of our buildings. Those are the things that you inherit. A gap analysis, if it shows that these sacred cows are no longer useful, will be a great tool for us to move beyond those. You discover what your school is missing. You look for those within the data. You look for those big bumps from where you are to where you want to be, and it identifies areas for you to focus on. So it's a very useful tool in helping you see what's not working, what's the gap, and develop your plan to get toward there through your PLCs or as an administrative decision. It's also quite helpful. And this is quite telling when people are asked to identify the gap. They may not even know you have a gap in your school. But it's beneficial sometimes if people do their own analysis and you kind of compare them to see what people actually know, because many times people don't really even know that there's a problem, there's a gap. Running a school is very difficult, so it's important to have the right tools. A gap analysis is one of those. It is easy to convey a correct message. It's also easy because you can use that education, the language that we speak, in a way that's really simple for the people in the building to understand, as well as other stakeholders who you need to buy into improvements in the school. Because you were using sometimes words get lost, but when people understand numbers, they understand visual charts. And there's a couple of different kinds of gap analysis tools at the end of this presentation, but I won't spend a lot of time on those. So what's so great about it? It lays out on the table. It's useful for strategic purposes and strategic planning. It will guarantee that if it's used correctly and used appropriately, it will move your organization forward. It allows your stakeholders and your staff to make decisions about what's best for students. And as an administrator, when you get into that role as an administrator, it really does give you an opportunity to make your next step. What is it you're going to do to maximize the changes, which in turn will maximize any of the positive changes you have, minimize a lot of the conflict that's unnecessary, and a gap analysis will help you with that. So once you do this gap analysis, which you're going to be doing through your evidences, it's important that you review it to make sure there's no errors, because a gap analysis, if there's errors in it, can take you into different directions, which are not going to solve your problems or move toward improvement. It's important to review it and to revise it, to put it in a way that's easy to read and interpret, and to share with other members to make sure that they see exactly what you see. And then as a PLC or school improvement team, to agree on a plan of action using that gap analysis. So do you really need one? Is it really a great tool? Absolutely. You need it not only for this course and other courses, but you do need it for school improvement. It gives you a great picture of where you are and where you want to be, and then the tools to get toward that, or the steps to get toward it. It's great because it also provides joint ownership of the continuous improvement process with your team. If you are an administrator and you go in and you have all the answers and you have all the ways that you're going to improve, you're leaving out the most important people in that continuous improvement model, and that is the people who are teaching the students. And that is oftentimes the parents who have some stakeholder or other stakeholders in that particular building, in that particular student body. So color is always helpful, line thickness, other things. So here's a couple of different kinds of gap analysis that you might want to just look at to give you an idea of moving forward, some of the ways in which you can do it. But it basically has three components to it. There's your current state, there's your desired state, and that gap is what's in between. And this is where you ask the questions of what do you need to do to get there, and then how do you do that? That's the planning stage. So it gives you an idea, your benchmark of here we are, here's where we want to be, and then the gap is what you need to work on. So that's one model. There are other models as well. If I can move forward. The very same thing, current state, desired state, the action plan, how to get there. A couple of others. This one is a particular example of a food industry where it's taking too long to be served. This could be something obviously that you could just replace with your own example in your school building, and then you just work toward the objectives, the current situation, desired outcome, and again, the gap. So that's what you really are focusing on. You're using that gap as an opportunity, a jumping off opportunity to make improvements. Another gap analysis where you have your desired state, your current state, and of course the action plans to get there. Yet another. Any of these could be useful tools toward you as you begin to look toward ways in which you can eliminate that gap and identify that gap and make sure that your staff has ownership of that particular gap at your school. You can address the gap on your own, but if your school doesn't buy in it, they don't see it, then your ownership is going to serve only you, and the school's not going to have the buy-in that they absolutely need to. Always a SWOT analysis, those you're very familiar with, is another great way to identify gaps within your building. And I think that's all that I have for the gap analysis. But just to kind of wrap it up on the gap analysis, it's a wonderful tool to help you understand, other than just going in making willy-nilly decisions based on what you think or what you feel. It's a great way to use that data to identify what that gap is. It's a great way to get your staff to buy into what that desired outcome is. And then and once they do that, and once they realize where they are, it's a great way to begin to identify steps toward moving toward eliminating that gap. So does anyone have any questions about that little PowerPoint? I'll be glad to answer any. If not, I'll turn it back over to you, Dr. Stedman, Dr. Lamb.
Dr. Lamb, you have any comments about
Dr.
that?
Stedman, can you put us back up the template for the APTEL, and I'll show you where the gap analysis is in the APTEL
Okay, let me see.
between the desired and the actual, the gap between those. All right, if you will roll back up.
Okay.
Roll back up to task 2.
Let me see.
There we go. Right there they are. There's your gap analysis between, you know, that's the basis, that's the data where you collect your data. I mean, between what's real. When we take this and then we do our percentages, we'd add another column over here to the right that says only 15% are doing similarities and differences. The gap is 85% between there, and we want everybody doing every one of these things. So this is the instrument that we use for a gap, to collect our data for gap analysis. The what? Roll on up. Here's the one. Yes, no, only 15%. Again, you'd add another column over here to the right. Only 15% of our teachers have input on professional development. Again, we want 100% on all these. And so we would figure out what our gap is. This is our tools that we collect our data with. The what? And then we would determine what our gap is. And then the why would be is why is it this way? And that would lead us to our plan. And that plan, I have one that I've done. I call mine MTSS for Teachers, but it's a professional development plan that utilizes whole group, small group, one-on-one instruction. You know, that's what I have in mind. It's my professional development plan that I would put in place if I were still in the building. And the amount of whole group, small group, one-on-one is based on this, on the gap analysis here. Again, if 95% of the teachers were doing summarizing and note-taking, we wouldn't spend a lot of time on that. Conversely, if only 5%, that would be a major part of my, that gap analysis of my professional development plan. So the gap analysis is from what is to what you want it to be, and then you ask people why, the qualitative piece, we collect that, and then we put a plan in place to address it. That's the how. How are we going to fix this? Your professional development plan is the how we're going to fix it. This is how we collect the data, and then we figure out what the gap is percentage-wise. If we have 15 yes and 5 no's, that means 3/4 of them it's a yes, 75%. We probably would just address that in PLCs and small groups. You know, we would have some metrics there. Anything that less than half the faculty is doing on a regular basis, we better pay attention in whole group where we got them all together and we're working on this.
Dr. Lamb, if they go to the APTEL template and materials, they'll find your document,
MTSS for Teachers, exactly. And you can see, now I intentionally didn't put it in the format of the graphic organizer because everybody just copy it. But you can see the idea here of what I'm going to do in mine. It is already in your shell. That would be mine. And out of that, I would develop, I could take and then, it is a graphic organizer, but I could then take it And that's what I would do. I could then take it and fill out that graphic organizer for the actual plan that we have for you to do. Now, I didn't do that step because everybody just copies it. I did it one time, so I no longer post it. But I have posted my plan based on how I would do it based on my data and based on what my gap analysis tells me.
Dr. Lamb,
So
before I go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, to summarize, what we're attempting to do here is design and deliver staff development that's relevant, that meets the needs that we have, that addresses instruction. That's not something else, some discipline program or social emotional. Those things have their place. But we're talking about now is teaching and learning. That's what this first semester, that's what 601 is all about, is about teaching and learning. It's not about discipline. It's not about PBIS, none of that. This is about classroom instruction being the heart of your school. And that this is the extension of the APSEL into the APTEL. We learn now in the APSEL to determine what our gaps are and then put programs in place. Now we're looking at our teaching and what gaps exist in our teaching and put the plan in place to address the teachers. This is about the teachers. This is about the adults now in the building. This is about them getting better. And so that's we're trying to build a culture of teaching and learning. That's what APSEL and the APTEL are about.
Dr. Lamb, we're not scheduled to come online Thursday night. But I think, can you hear me? He can't hear me. He walked away. Dr. Revis, you go ahead and bring some closing comments, and then when he gets back, then I'll ask him my question.
Okay. Candidates, you've heard me say before that one of the things that I really like about the Gardner Webb program is that we are providing you tasks and assignments that you are actually going to use when you become a school leader. The APTEL is a task and process that you're going to use or should be using to move your school forward in that mode of continuous improvement. Probably 15 years ago, I didn't hear school leaders want to talk about a gap assessment. They didn't want to talk much about a needs assessment. But nowadays, we are so accountable not only to our students, which we're always accountable to our students, but we're also accountable to our community. And you have to be very comfortable with this process of analyzing your data, talking about those gaps, talk about your gaps publicly. You want to be the first one to talk about your gaps and to look at your research and devise a plan for school improvement and improving that instruction. So again, a very authentic project that you will be using or should be using when you become a school leader.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Revis. And Santa Claus has joined us. He has officially joined us. I mean,
it's that season.
It's official now. Dr. Lamb, we are not scheduled to come online Thursday night, but I think maybe we probably need to. We've got the others from the other groups that may need to hear some of the same things that we've talked about. Are you okay with that?
I'm available.
Let's do it on
for a
Tuesday.
small fee.
Okay, charge it. Let's come online Thursday night for those that need to come online, and then we can invite those others. Some things were said tonight that I think everybody needs to hear, maybe that were not with us tonight.
Okie dokie.
Okay, so those of you that are with us tonight, if you want more of what we talked about tonight on Thursday night, we will revisit some of the same things, but we've got some others that need to hear our story as well. So we will just, the same link, you just join in on Thursday night, okay? Okay, well, good night, everybody.
Good night.
Merry
Merry Christmas.
Good night. Ho, ho, ho.